Okay, time for a bit of a recap then. I haven't had much time to work on the car. When I haven't been feeling altogether too well lately. So at the weekend, when I was offered an hour or two to myself to go and tinker with whatever I needed to do outside, I figured I'd come down and spend it on the car. Now, as we know, I've been struggling to try and get the car to maintain a proper idle. It's been a bit of an issue because it's been revving up, so we assumed that there was an air leak somewhere. So in the end, I got bored of trying to find where the air leak was. I took the manifold completely off the car. I checked all the faces that I'd filed down and just gave them an extra little notch, just a tiny amount. What I'd also done is bought an insulating gasket that goes along the back of the head, and then that smooths out any imperfections. So if you've got carbs or something similar to what it's designed for, bike bodies, it just makes sure that it makes a perfect seal. So with that, with the little breathers on the back of the manifold themselves sealed off, but also with a little bit of instant gasket in there, with this gasket and a bit of the gasket against the head to make sure that was perfectly sealed and everything bolted down and relatively tight, I decided to try and start the car, and this is what happened.
But it's running, yes. Very low RPM, but it's running.
So as you can see, I was absolutely delighted. I've managed to get the car back together, so it's mostly all back together anyway. There's a bit left to do, so I need to tidy up the wiring, I need to sort out the breather, the fuel filter finally has been dispatched, so I need to fit that, but at least we know that bit of it now works, and it's booked in for mapping. I've literally just been speaking to the chap that's coming to collect the car and pop it on the truck, so I shall jump in the car with him and then hopefully be able to drive it back. So that's where I am. Oh, and the rev counter started working, so I thought this was going to need some sort of extra driver, but apparently not. So it seems to now be working, which is also great news. So I'm very happy about that too. So there we go. It is running, it is idling, but it's not yet driving. So I'm going to miss the classic Ford show irritatingly, which is at Ardingly, so not too far away from me at all. But nevertheless, the car will be up and running and we should be able to get out to some shows this year. It's idling okay now. There's not a huge amount of smoke coming out the back, which was a massive problem. Really worried me for a bit. There's a bit of fuel coming out the back where it's chucking quite a lot through, but I've had it sat here and it's getting up to temperature. The thermostat's opening, so the radiator's starting to get hot, which is good. The fans haven't cut in yet because I've had things sat here idling for probably 30-40 minutes. The idle's a bit low presently, it's about 600 RPM, so I need to get that adjusted to get some temperature into it and just make sure everything's working properly and make sure the fans can cut in, because it should cut in this car, I think, somewhere around about 95 to 100-ish degrees, which of course, well, I can't test electronically because it's still running the original system. I'm starting to get a bit twitchy about that, and I might actually change it to electronic control from the ECU so it can sort itself out as it wants to, but it's got up to temperature, it hasn't gone out of the normal zone, the coolant level looks okay. I'm just going to check everything over in a moment for leaks and just have a bit more of a tidy up in the engine bay.
Right, you may notice that the onion is idling. This is good. I was advised that there's no way to actually physically adjust the idle speed electronically. It has to be done if you're using an idle speed control valve, if you've got one wired in. This has got one, but it's not wired in. Otherwise, there's a little grub screw which adjusts the stop on the back of the throttle plate. You've got a little throttle bit at the end where it rests on this. Apparently on some of them you can access the back of it if you melt the resin and then wind through. Now this has got a little grub screw in there that's in a threaded collar, so I figured it'd be handy if you just undo that, but it doesn't seem to be possible to undo it. So what I did just to test it was get a nylon nut, just like this, wind it onto the, it's an M5 one in case you're wondering, and wind it onto the little grub screw. That's managed to keep it idling at 1100 RPM. Great, that's too much. So what I've now done is grab another nylon nut, because obviously it's unlikely to undo, and I have put it in the vise, and I've ground the back of it down. So it now looks sort of the same, but a bit like that, yeah? As opposed to like that. So what it's actually done is reduce it down by about 1 millimetre, which hopefully should give me just enough. You can see the difference between the two, my fat thumbs. There you go. Just enough where I can wind it down onto there nice and tight, and it should allow me to idle when warm at 900. We'll see. Well, it's getting warm. It's idling about 1300, which is obviously too much. Something like this. And that is now a bit more like it.